Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C. We have the breakdown, crisis, and disintegration of the world financial system proceeding apace. Rumors of an early default by Greece, and we'll get into that in just a minute. It's clear that the entire European banking system is on the brink. This is not related to economic fundamentals. It is related to an attack by credit default swaps. It is currency warfare, economic warfare, exporting the depression into Europe. It is a matter of beggar my neighbor, the British strategy from the 1930s, competitive devaluations and all the rest, now being imitated by the Anglo-Americans under the advice of Christina Romer, who's basically said it's time to drain the capital out of Europe and attack. So the dollar is rising, the euro is falling, and all the hyenas are announcing that they're going long the dollar, and indeed the world is piling into U.S. Treasury securities. We have a lot of economic news. We have strategic news. But let's get into the 9/11 anniversary happening to coincide now with the threat, I think a serious threat, of a new false flag event. A new false flag terror event on some large scale seems now to be highly plausible, perhaps probable. It's time for vigilance. It's time to look ahead to see the drills, the exercises, the war games, the other activities of the military and the security apparatus that could be used to bootleg and conduit the coming event, if such there may be. Now, this picture was coming together over the last couple of days. I talked about it last night on Tom Kiley's INN World Report. You'll see that posted on Tarpley.net. You'll also see a bunch of other radio appearances. Bonnie Faulkner's Guns and Butter, the 46 Drills of 9/11. An appearance with Jeff Rentz, an appearance earlier this week, now ending with Tom Kiley at INN World Report. Let me just digress for a second to say that I will be in New York City on Sunday, September 11th, at the INN Studios downtown. You can look at this under howtheworldchanged.org. Howtheworldchanged.org. That's INN World Report website for the purposes of this gathering. And there are some fairly well-known names. I had talked essentially on INN World Report about Angel is Next, the political evidence, the primacy of the political evidence, largely ignored by the hyper-technical antiquarians who have written many books and often dominate the public discussion on 9/11 with results of obvious impotence and failing to follow the political tracks. Last night when I talked to Tom Kiley, I talked about the picture coming together, and then what I had not known at the time of the broadcast then came together, that U.S. officials were saying that there is now a credible and specific but unconfirmed threat of a terror event from Al-Qaeda, and I put that in quotes, in New York City and Washington, D.C. over the 9/11 weekend, which is now about to begin. And this is supposed to take the form of a car bomb and or truck bomb in New York City or Washington, D.C. Well, it's plausible. That's what the one ingredient missing was this official warning. You've also had a week in which people like former Mayor Giuliani, Governor Kaine, Congressman Lee Hamilton, the two fakers-in-chief of the 9/11 Cover-Up Commission and Whitewash Brigade, were pontificating on the radio and television about the dangers of new attacks and so forth. We had John Brennan, of Obama's in-house security expert there in the White House. Naturally, when they say Al-Qaeda, we want to ask them, is it coming from the Libyan branch? Is it coming from Hassadi Belhaj? Is it coming from Salabi? Is it coming from the people that you've now installed in power in Tripoli, Libya? Because they're all from Al-Qaeda, and they're stealing surface-to-air missiles as fast as they can, and those will eventually show up in all sorts of places around the world. They will rue the day, but they've done it, and this is now ongoing. So let's look at the intelligence picture that would tend to point to the expediency of a new 9/11-style false flag attack for the Anglo-American financier establishment. Since we're talking about this rogue network doing it, the rogue network exists at the point where the top bosses of the intelligence community, active duty and retired, the real bosses, not necessarily the bosses that appear on the organizational charts, where that joins hands with the Wall Street financial community. And again, there it's not necessarily the people who appear on the charts, but the people who exercise real power to some degree, perhaps from behind the scenes, from behind screens. So the plausible constellation pointing to a new false flag terror event. First of all, the European banking panic, which we're going to talk about later. We've got a whole series of European banks. Let's just, we can go through it here. If we can just find these stock quotes. The stock quotes are, Barclays Bank is down 9% today. Royal Bank of Scotland is down 6% today. BNP Paribas down 7.5% today. And Deutsche Bank down 9%. Now, this is getting into Lehman territory, Bear Stearns territory, Lehman territory. We can soon begin to look for the signs of the characteristic death spiral, where these zombie institutions can no longer borrow, no matter who is backing them up. And the word today is that the European interbank lending system is beginning to freeze. European interbank lending system beginning to freeze. That would also extend then into the ability of the American branches of these entities to finance themselves. Can they market their commercial paper in the New York market? Probably not at any decent price. So the European banks are about to blow. That means the U.S. banks are about to blow. Ironically, the U.S. brought this crisis about with the credit default swap attack on Europe over the last 1.5 to 2 years. Ironically, it's not going to save the dollar or the U.S. because the moment when Europe blows, that panic will then skip back over the Atlantic Ocean and will be prominent here. The basic idea is that if these bankers want austerity, and if, above all, if they want bailouts, the public resistance to the banksters, I think, has crystallized to some extent, and it's going to be hard to get congressional approval and European parliamentary approval for the kinds of bailouts and austerity plans that the banksters are going to demand. In short, they may need martial law. It may be that the only way to suppress demonstrations against the banksters is to ban those demonstrations under a pre-existing terror emergency, not against the people, of course, but against those dark forces from the Middle East that want to carry out these attacks. So as a way to get martial law, so you can get a bailout, you can put that through as a national security measure. It would also give Obama the ability to extort from Congress and from Europe more troops, more money, more commitment, for example, for an attack on Syria. The 12 tyrants. We've had the first meeting of the Super Committee, Super Congress here. The 12 tyrants are going to have to agree with Obama and with the larger Congress for a program of brutal genocidal austerity against the American people, or an automatic guillotine will come down on the Pentagon budget. This will be about $60 billion a year for the next 10 years, at least in theory. Now, some of that can get fudged. But the threat to the Pentagon budget, I think, by now is real enough. In order to get that off the table, in order to rule out what they would regard, the rogue people, as ruinous cuts to the U.S. Enforcement capabilities, a new terror attack seems to be indicated. You also got a rising wave of public disgust. People want the war in Iraq to finally end, as in end, down to zero. The military want to keep 15 to 18,000. That's almost half of what they've got right now. Obama's offering 3,000. A new terror attack would shift it in the direction the militarists want. So we'll be back in just a minute here on World Crisis Radio.